Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing great. Today, the guest that we have invited is Dr. Manjit Singh Sandhu, who is working as a senior lecturer for more than 10 years at Monash University, Malaysia. And he has been researching on corporate social responsibility for so many years. And today, he would be sharing very thoughtful and very interesting information about CSR and that how COVID-19 has impacted CSR practices of organizations. And he would be also discussing about the corporate social innovation as well as the role of corporate ethics. Moreover, how one can measure the genuinity of such practices and also the consumer reaction towards CSR of different organizations. So let's go to our session. So now I would like to welcome our guest, Dr. Manjit Singh Sandhu from Monash University. He's working as a senior lecturer there and also as a head of a professional master's program. So he has been researching on corporate social responsibility for many years, and today he will be sharing very, thoughtful and very important information about this crucial topic of corporate social responsibility in the perspective of Malaysia. Moreover, he will also be discussing various other areas that are related to corporate social responsibility. So thank you very much, Dr. Manjit, for joining us here today and giving us your precious time.
Okay, thank you, Nayab, and I'm happy to be here, and hope you're going to enjoy the presentation. I think before I start, just briefly a little bit about Monash University. Monash University actually is an Australian university, and they've got campuses in Malaysia. They've got a campus in Malaysia. It's actually the only campus outside of Australia. The Malaysian campus started off in the late 1990s, 98, if I'm not mistaken. It's already 22 years now. We've got about 10,000 students in the Malaysian campus. And of course, the Malaysian campus, the courses are just confined to, I think, about 6 or 7 courses. We have got a School of Business, Engineering, Science, the medical faculty is there, the School of Arts is there. And then the School of Pharmacy they started the School of Pharmacy recently. And other than Malaysia, they're starting a campus in Indonesia very soon, focusing also on sciences, postgraduate. They've got a center in Prato, Italy. They've got an engineering collaboration in India, and they also have got another collaboration in China as well. All right, and okay, so that's a little bit about Malaysian campus, and I'll tell you that the School of Business is very diverse. The head of School of Business is also a Pakistani, but he's a British-born Pakistani. And in my department as well, we have got very diverse staff, from Japan, from China, I've got one colleague from Pakistan as well, who joined us 1.5 years ago. Okay, so that's a little bit about Monash Malaysia. So now let's move on to the presentation. Okay, so quickly, what I'm going to do is I will just quickly go into some of these CA concepts and all that. And then I will move on into the main area, which is looking at the impact on CSR practices, how COVID-19 has impacted CSR practices. And then I will, towards the end, I will go into some discussion questions. Okay, I'm sure many of you are familiar with these concepts, but you'll be surprised that, sometimes when I do corporate presentations, I ask, corporate people, what's the meaning of all these terms? And even corporate people sometimes are not very clear. Okay, because if you look at organizations, I'm sure you will find this in Pakistan as well. So many concepts. We have got corporate responsibility. We've got corporate social responsibility. We've got social responsibility. We've got sustainability. Now, why so many terms? Well, the first one is corporate responsibility. again, you see the word social is not there because responsibility of the firm is not only confined to social responsibility. So some companies say we don't want to use the word social, we just want to use the word corporate responsibility. Then you have, of course, CSR. I'll give you the definition as I move on. Then we have social responsibility. The word corporate is not there. Why? Simple, right? Is CSR only confined to corporations at the end of the day? Ask yourself a question, right? When you say corporate, means large firms. What about small firms? Okay, should small firms also, be socially responsible? So that is why, you'll find that some firms, they don't use the word corporate, they only use the word social responsibility. Because there are many small firms that are also socially responsible. They have got their own CSR practices as well. And of course, the fourth one, sustainability. Again, now a concept which I would say has become more popular lately because it is much broader. I would say a large number of multinational companies today, even conglomerates, they don't use the word CSR anymore. They use the word sustainability. And I'll tell you why in the next few slides. Okay, so the concept of CSR quickly. Of course, there are various definitions there, and this is one of the most popular definitions that is used in many of the publications. From the EU, the European Commission came up with this definition: the responsibility of enterprises for their impacts on society. Okay, so again, they are talking about responsibility of firms, meaning that the main objective of the firm should not only be profits. Okay, you ask this question to a businessman, the businessman will say, that's being foolish. Okay, a businessman will never agree. Why should I be responsible? Shouldn't my objective be maximization of profit? I'll get back into that debate. Okay, in the next few slides, we'll talk about that. And then you can see the next bullet point there again, to integrate social, environmental, ethical, human rights. So you can see that it is more than just social responsibility. You also have environmental responsibility. You also have human rights, consumer concerns, and all that. Okay, embedded, into their core strategies of the firm. And of course, you can see, if you look at this definition, the main aim of this EC definition is generally, you can see, to maximize the creation of shared value. The word shared value. Okay, you create shared value. That means you take care of your main shareholders. At the same time, you also need to take care of other stakeholders as well. I'll come back again to this concept later. Okay, so again, another definition there, commitment to improve community well-being through discretionary business practices. The word discretionary business comes in. Why? It means that now, if you look at this definition, what they are saying is that CSR is not mandatory. You cannot force companies to have, it is through their own discretion. So what they want to do, whatever they want to focus, okay, they, it's discretionary, they can decide. So why not? Why not, CSR, is a discretionary practice. Why should it be mandatory? Again, we can sit down and we can debate. We can have a very good debate. On one side, we have people who support CSR, right? And then you have another side, you call the corporate people who say CSR is waste of money and, and it will never end. Okay, and then the definition of sustainability, very broad definition. Okay, if you look at the definition of sustainability, you will find that the key aspect of this definition is time. Okay, they talk about time. Needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generation. Today, you are allocating resources, you are exploiting resources. Make sure you don't over exploit, make sure you keep it for the next generation. So it's generally talking about sustaining. Okay, is my voice clear? Can you all hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, because I had suddenly the internet beat down. Again, hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, 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 we can.
Shall I proceed?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So again, when you talk about sustainability, this is more comprehensive. We have three pillars there: the economic responsibility, environmental responsibility, and social responsibility. Okay, and then we have got these United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. I'm sure you have seen these before, right? And today, a large number of corporations, they tend to link their CSR practices to these United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Not all the 17 goals. I think it's impossible to link to all the 17 goals because there's too many things there. Okay, but you can see if you look at it, number one is no poverty. Of course, a business solve a poverty problem in the world. Why should I? It's always an argument. You look at it, okay, things like zero hunger and good health and well-being, okay, it makes sense. Clean water and sanitation. So you can see very broad areas here. Okay, so this is again a way how you are able to link your CSR practices, meaning that assuming that you graduate and ultimately you get a job in charge of CSR, right? You see a large number of companies linking their CSR goals to these sustainable development goals as well. Okay, so I'm done with the definition, and I'm now just quickly going to go into why CSR. Why do you think companies need to be socially responsible? What is the underlying arguments there, right? And of course, I would say the three of the most popular arguments are, if you look at theories, right, you can use stakeholder theory, the stakeholder perspective there, meaning that when you are running a business, stakeholders. Accountants, they define stakeholders in a very narrow way. For accountants, normally stakeholders are only shareholders. Okay, but in management, when we define stakeholders, it's much broader than that. Okay, not just confined to your shareholders. Also, you have got your employees are also important stakeholders. Suppliers are also important stakeholders as well. The community is also very important. And then you've got, the government is also a stakeholder as well because you are paying tax to the government. Okay, so that's the argument that you need to be responsible to all your stakeholders. Okay, you cannot just focus on only the main shareholders. And then we have got the institutional perspective. Okay, the institutional perspective here means that companies engage in CSR because of formal regulations. The word cohesive there, cohesive means, in different countries, I'm not sure about Pakistan, I know in Malaysia, it is mandatory for all public listed companies to have CSR reports. So if you're a public listed company, you need to have CSR reports. The only way you can have CSR reports is if you engage in CSR. Only then you can write reports. Am I right or not? So in other words, they are telling you that you need to be involved in CSR. So that's mandatory. And I think it's quite similar, I think, in Singapore and in quite a number of, I'm sure in Pakistan, you may have certain regulations on this as well, right? So wherever you go, okay, there may be regulations on the environmental regulations. For example, there are regulations on emission, there are regulations on quality and all that. And then we have got normative institutions. These are generally the norms in industries. For example, if you are in the automobile industry, I'm sure there are certain standards there on quality, if you are in the manufacturing of clothes, I'm sure there are certain standards there, make sure you are not exploiting workers and all that. Okay, you are in the pharmaceutical industry as well. There are certain industry standards that you have to meet. So meaning that these norms are there. So if you are in that industry, you need to follow. And then of course we have cognitive pressure. Cognitive pressure here means the word mimetic means you are generally following maybe your competitors, right? For example, if Nestle is involved in CSR, then Procter and Gamble will say, okay, Nestle is doing so much in CSR, I also want to do CSR as well. So you tend to follow your main competitors. You know why? Because you don't want to be left behind. So these are all institutional perspective to why companies go into CSR as well. So there are many reasons to it. Okay, and again, imagine you ask a small company, right? A small firm. A small firms, it's not a must for them to have CSR practices, but quite a number of small firms go into CSR as well. Why do you think they go into CSR? So I'm sure they've got different reasons. Okay, all right. So that can be a PhD topic actually, a PhD research topic. And then the third one is strategic perspective. Strategic perspective here means that companies, they go into CSR because they find that there's a win-win situation, that win-win, meaning that I do good, doing well by doing good. I'm sure you have heard this before. Okay, so meaning that, okay, I do a lot of CSR, my reputation will increase. I take care of my employees will be happy, they'll be more committed, job satisfaction level will increase, that will enhance my reputation, my brand image, and ultimately, people will talk about my company all the time, and I'll win a lot of awards. So from a strategic perspective, you enhance your reputation, your goodwill. Okay, so that is, so meaning there's always a motive. And that's where the concept of this strategic perspective was actually advocated by Michael Porter. I'm sure many of you all heard about, you know who Michael Porter is?
Yes, five forces.
Yeah, five forces. So Michael Porter has got his own consulting company, and he's the one actually came up with the concept of CSV as well. And he's selling his ideas to, there are a lot of large multinational companies like Samsung, Nestle they have engaged Michael Porter as a consultant. He's actually providing his services, and they are using his concept. Although a lot of people question this because when you say you create shared value, right? Michael Porter is saying, okay, wherever you think that you can benefit the firm, you do it. What about areas where you don't benefit the firm? Do you neglect that? That's where people criticize it. Because he says, okay, if you think that this practice will enhance the reputation of the firm, then you go all out doing this. What about areas where it doesn't really enhance the company's reputation? Do you know that? So that's where people are saying that, if you are following creating shared value, then you will cherry pick. Cherry pick means you only do CSR where you think it benefits you. In areas where it doesn't benefit you, you just ignore. You understand? So that's where the criticism came in. Okay, and I agree with that as well. Okay, so quickly, if you look at examples of CSR practices, right? I was talking about different stakeholders. If you take care of your employees means you need to have workplace practices. So you can see some of the working conditions, you have got diversity and inclusion policies, your mental health support. So all these are examples of practices for the employee. And then the environment as well, if you are in the manufacturing sector, even services as well, you can see green initiatives, recycling facilities, sustainability policies. And then if you are looking at social issues as well, if you want to address some social issues, you give charity, fundraising events, and then in the case of community, why community comes in? In some industries, sometimes, for example, if you are in the oil and gas industry, your plants may be located in an area where you are polluting the environment. And whatever you are doing, you are actually affecting the community. So it's your responsibility to look after the community as well. So you can see there, right? A lot of the initiative there is to take care of the community. You build schools, you donate computers for the community, and so forth. So those are all practices that are geared towards the community as well. Okay, so quickly, those are generally some terms, concepts. We looked at the definitions and why CSR, and we looked at CSR practices. So quickly, now the next few slides, I'm going to just touch on the impact of COVID-19 on Malaysia. Generally, the lockdown came in on March 18, 2020. Okay, and then it was right until middle of May, and then we had a conditional lockdown. CMCO is conditional. MCO stands for Movement Control Order. Okay, so C is that a conditional movement control order, meaning when the conditional movement control order came in, you can now go out and you can still drive around, you can go to the restaurants, but there's still restrictions and all that. And then the RMCO is Recovery Movement Control Order. There was a time when the cases were very, very low, about less than 20. But since October, we are back to CMCO now because the cases went up again. Okay, and you can see some figures there. Economic contraction. The gross domestic product in Malaysia fell by 17% second quarter, and then it fell by 2.7% in the third quarter. So you can see some improvement in the third quarter. Okay, impact on jobs. I know this slide, right? The figures are very, very small, but just quickly, you can see that huge impact on jobs, especially in the manufacturing sectors. You can see that a lot of companies started to allow their employees to work from home, and in some industries, especially aviation. If you're in the airline industry, in Malaysia, we have got the biggest budget airline in the world, Air Asia. I don't know whether you are aware of Air Asia. They've got 24,000 employees. And you just imagine, and they are not flying now. Can you imagine what these 24,000 employees are doing? Okay, and I mean, it's crazy. Of course, Air Asia is not only in Malaysia. They've got a subsidiary in India, in Japan, in Thailand, in Indonesia. Okay, and so the huge impact there, and you can see, of course, some industries are not really impacted as much. Farming is also impacted because farmers cannot export, especially when we had the MCO, they could not export their products out of the country, so they were affected as well. Okay, and of course, some industries like retail and all that were still okay. Okay, the hotel industry. So you can see the layoffs there. Some were asked to go on unpaid leave. There were salary reductions as well. Quite a number of hotels closed down. You'll be surprised. Nayab, you're talking about Langkawi now. You mark my word, the Langkawi hotels are struggling big time. Big time. There are quite a number of hotels in Penang as well. They closed down completely. Okay, and restaurants closed down as well, operating some for 20, 30 years. So the situation is really bad. And so you can see some industries are very badly affected there. The food and beverage, you can see fisheries, accommodation, the hotel industry as well. And of course, they are affected in different ways. Less working hours, some are told to go on unpaid leave. I know pilots are now selling food. A lot of pilots, they are retrenched and they have gone into their own businesses, small businesses. So the situation is it's quite bad, and I would say that I think it's going to get worse in the first quarter next year. Okay, and then of course you look at the startups as well. I'm sure in Pakistan there are a lot of startups, and startups always struggle, especially when you don't have financing. And you can see that there was a survey here, and they asked a question: how long can your operation sustain if the current situation continues? And you can see majority of them, some of them even only 1 month. And you can see some 10 to 12 months, and it's already reaching 10 to 12 months. We are almost reaching, we already now, we started in March, so it's already 9 months now. So in January will be 10 months. So how are these startups going to survive? I'm not very sure. Definitely, they need help from the government. Okay, and then impact of COVID-19 on the aviation industry. So you can see that the aviation industry generally is projected to lose 13 billion ringgit. That's about 3,000 US 3,000 billion American dollars. And so you can see airlines, some airlines, I think Malindo has almost closing down. Air Asia as well. Air Asia Japan is ceasing operation completely. Malaysian Airlines, they have offered unpaid leave to about 13,000 of its employees. So that's not a joke. Okay, so you can see how serious, the pandemic is. Okay, in a snapshot, right? Let's summarize the impact of COVID-19. Let's look at the economic impact there. And then we look at the social impact, the environmental impact. Okay, the economic impact, of course, lower profits, unemployment, inflation as well. I found that food prices in the initial period went up, because people were hoarding food, people were panicking, they were buying groceries more than what they needed. Higher government expenditure because government need.
Yes.
Okay, so lower tax revenue as well. So even the government is going to be affected as well because when businesses are not doing well, they pay less tax. And then you can see some of the worst hit sectors: the hotel industry, aviation, restaurants. Border closure as well affected the trade restrictions. So whether you are in agriculture, manufacturing, to some extent you're going to be affected. Then the social impact, well-being of people, employees. We've got poverty issues. We've got lost year for education. I'm not sure whether you are aware, but everybody is saying that the year 2020 is a lost year for education. Especially if you are in the university, you are fine. I think you are able to cope. But if you are, in primary school or you are in secondary school, the infrastructure in developing countries is not at par with the developed world. I can tell you that. So can you imagine students who come from low income households? They don't have all the computers and all that, so they are not able to follow whatever online lessons that's going on.
True.
So a lot
We
of
had
issues, and then human rights. Yes.
I'm saying we had this issue in Pakistan. A lot of students were not able to attend lectures because
Yes.
of no internet.
So you can see the internet. Of course, internet is not an issue in Malaysia. We've got our infrastructure. It's still not the best, but it is still quite good. And then human rights. We've got a large number of workers, foreign workers in Malaysia. From India, from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, from Indonesia as well. And there are a lot of issues because I'm sure you know that unions in this part of the world, they are not very strong. And a lot of industries are not even unionized. So it's not like the West. You go to Germany and all that, unions are very strong, and so you have unemployment benefits and so forth. And then higher crime rates, the right to education. Again, this is a huge social issue now. What's going to happen? Whether parents are. Of course, education is not compulsory in Malaysia yet. I don't think so we have reached that stage. I know in some countries education is compulsory. Exploitation of labor, we have got poor living conditions. Then there's mental stress. I know a pilot who actually committed suicide, jumping from his condominium in Malaysia. And he was a senior pilot because probably he would have he lost his job. He's stressed because he's got all these liabilities now. You have to pay for your house. Still divide, so is again another issue as well. And of course, the informal economy. And environmental side, you look at the positive impact. I think on the positive side, the first few months, because there was a slowdown in manufacturing and even the service sector as well, so lower carbon emission there, improvement in air quality in cities, and of course people started to work home again, less impact on these vehicle carbon emissions as well. Of course, on the negative side, high demand for face masks. I'm sure you same thing in Pakistan as well. And then high demand for rubber and synthetic gloves. Malaysia is the biggest producer of rubber gloves in the world. I don't know whether you are aware, right? We are the biggest producers of rubber gloves. The biggest company in the world, second biggest company in the world, the third biggest company in the world is from Malaysia. Okay, so all these gloves that are used in the West, in the US, in Europe, and all that comes from Malaysia. So there's high demand there, and of course that means again more manufacturing, more pollution, increase in waste. You'll be surprised if you come to Malaysia, you'll find a lot of these face masks on the streets, in the rivers and all that. People are not disposing these masks, and of course, the focus of companies is also now towards other things, right? They're not focusing on environmental impact much more. So I'm sure, in some industries, when they are not able to survive, they stop their recycling practices as well. Okay, so quickly, some CSR practices. So you can see generally in Malaysia, the local companies as well as the multinational companies, they started a lot of CSR initiatives in the last 7-8 months. You can see Nestle there setting a fund to help low-income communities. We have got Watson, Malaysia, is a pharmacy, generally contributed products to hospitals, healthcare, and they provided their own brands. You can see their own sanitizers, they donated all this. And then there's another example there. It's a property solution company, KYY Home, having some CSR efforts there on helping single mothers, providing some, some monetary donations, to the single mothers. Okay, what else? Moratorium on loan repayment. I'm not sure whether you had this in Pakistan. In Malaysia, from April to September, we were given a moratorium. We did not pay our mortgage and we did not pay our car loans. So the banks allowed us, a 6 months period not to pay loans until September. A car loan, you had a housing loan, you don't pay anything for 6 months. Okay, and then of course they extended it from September onwards, they extended it, but that extension was only given to the B40 group. B40 group are generally the household earning less than 4,850 ringgit a month. That's about 1,300 US dollars a month. Okay, and of course also extended to micro enterprises as well. Okay, what else? Sunway Food Bank. Sunway is actually a conglomerate in Malaysia. They have got huge investments in properties, in hotels and all that. And they started this food bank to help the needy. And of course, you can see the last example there, another company from Malaysia building infrastructure for poor villages, for these mushroom farming projects in Sabah. Okay, so you can see this is a picture there on the Sunway Group having their food bank there. They created a booth. You want to donate and you just come and donate. This booth was there in the mall. Okay, if you come to Kuala Lumpur, you will find one of the biggest mall in Southeast Asia, Sunway Pyramid. Okay, it looks like the pyramid in Egypt. There's a pyramid in Egypt. Exactly, and they had this booth there. Okay, what else? You can see this college, this education college in Kuala Lumpur, unemployed Malaysians to upskill and to reskill the training programs. You can see a free online learning portals. The Brickfields College created free online learning portal, and so you can see that 175,000 students. Okay, and then of course, other than that, they have got the entrepreneur initiative as well, training and mentoring 10,000 startups. They had the Grad Jobs portal to increase employability among fresh graduates. And so these portals were all free. Okay, and then of course they also pledged to retain their staff. They did not retrench any staff. They had special activities to ensure the mental well-being and physical well-being of their staff. Okay, and then AirAsia launched also a Save Our Shops campaign to help small e-merchants to sell their products with zero commission and listing fees. So you can see these are again some of the practices. Okay, so of course, I think there are some challenges, when with regards to CSR. I think one of the biggest challenges that organizations face, not only in Malaysia, I would say anywhere in the world, would be how do you balance between your economic responsibility and your environment and social responsibility. Because your economic responsibility is to make money, okay, and then of course, you have to make money. At the end of the day, you cannot say I'm not going to make money. I'm only going to focus on the environment and social responsibility. Before you talk about helping others, you need to first make money. Without money, you're not able to help others. Am I right? Question is, how do you balance these two? That's a challenge. Because how much of profit do you need to make? And you can see the Price Waterhouse Sustainable Development Challenge. They found that 73% of Malaysian companies talk about the SDG goals in their reporting. CSR in the goals, only 20%. So meaning they talk about the goals, but for them to have clear-cut practices to to focus on those goals, it's quite challenging. Okay. Any questions until now before I go into this? So I was just thinking that since I've done my presentation now, maybe I can have some questions from the audience. Once I'm done with that, then you can give me a few minutes. I'll cover these discussion questions that you gave, Naya. How's that?
It was well explained, like you explained a lot of important points. Yes, students, do you have any questions to ask from the presentation up till now?
No, ma'am.
Okay, great. So I think they are clear because you well explained everything. You gave a lot of examples in Malaysian perspective, etc. So I believe they are clear about the content.
What I'll do is I will email the slides. You can share the slides with the students. It's discussion questions. You see, one thing you have to remember, I started doing research in CSR, I would say the last 7-8 years. I had two students of mine who actually did their PhDs in the area of CSR as well. But at the end of the day, that, when you talk about CSR, in the corporate world, you have to remember that you deal with business people. And business people, they are very practical, they are very practical oriented in the sense that, their orientation tend to be very, very different. Okay, and I'm going to address some of these issues in all these questions. So how would you define CSR during the pre and during the pandemic? I don't think so. The definition of CSR is going to change just because we have a pandemic. CSR is CSR. Sustainability is sustainability.
Yes, but the
How
way
you
they
define the
prioritize
definition.
the interventions, it might change like
Yeah,
what they are doing.
it's true. So the focus of the next question there, the focus of the activities, of course, that is where you will find that during the COVID-19 period here now, a lot of companies are what they are doing is they are focusing on some of the social issues that large number of people are facing. For example, if you are an employee and you got laid off, right? I would say that, for example, Air Asia laid off quite a number of employees. But what they do is before they lay them off, they are retraining these employees. Okay, what Air Asia did was they created a CSR academy. Okay, and they are offering online courses for their staff for free. You understand? They were retraining them so that they are able to be absorbed in other industries. All right, so you can see that the focus is again, they are looking after their staff. They also focus on not only their staff. I think a lot of people are affected by the CSR. This COVID-19, right? And in terms of well-being, those people who lost their jobs and all that. So I would say
Yes.
that if you come to Kuala Lumpur, you'll be surprised that I would say that in the cities as well, the whole thing, the concept of urban poverty, people are not able to manage. They are not able to pay their bills. They have to sell their properties if they've got more properties, or they've got no choice. Even know some of them decided to go back to the villages. Because the cost of living is much lower. So what companies are doing is they are giving a lot of donations, and channeling these donations to help those who need, funds and all that. Because you can't expect the government to do everything. So I think the private sector is coming in as well. Okay, and that's where the CSR interventions, you talk about CSR interventions. Okay, so of course the priority is going to change, but that doesn't mean that the old priorities are not important anymore. So meaning that if you are a manufacturer, you have got one of your main issues would be environmental carbon emission. So I don't think so you're going to ignore your carbon emission. You still maintain what you are doing, but possibly, when it comes to social initiatives, you introduce new social initiatives, targeting to all these communities that are badly affected due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so that's where I would say the priorities are there. Okay, donations. But one thing you have to remember that giving donation alone will not solve the problem. Donation is not sustainable. Okay, that's why the word sustainability, right? A lot of companies are using the concept sustainability because they say there's no point you give donations and money. What AirAsia is doing, training their employees, upskilling, reskilling is way, way better than just giving them monetary help. Okay, even you talk about single mothers or even women and all that, I know Maybank, one of the biggest bank in Malaysia, I think the fourth biggest bank in Southeast Asia. What they do is they actually train women, single mothers and all that to become entrepreneurs. That's what you need to do. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what you need to do. I know Unilever is doing this in India. In India, right? Unilever, I'm sure you have heard about the company Unilever.
Yes. Of course.
They are huge, right? They have got this
Yes.
project in India known as Shakti. Shakti project is where they are actually creating. They are what they are doing is they have got this training program. They train women in the villages to become entrepreneurs. Okay, so because you know why? To distribute Unilever products in India is very challenging because some of the villages are very, very remote. Okay, so how do they go about? So what they do is they give opportunities to these women to start small sundry shops in the villages and all that. Okay, that way you help them sustain. Okay, so can you imagine the women will be able to sustain and they are able to earn an income rather than just giving money to these women. That's not going to solve their problem. So that's why sustaining, and creating, a permanent income income that is sustainable is a better approach. Okay,
Right.
the fourth question there. Usually companies involved in CSR at surface level. I totally agree. I remember I had a debate in the university. We had this debate, and the debate was participated by students and staff. And you have got those who argue that CSR is greenwashing. Okay, meaning that,
Yes,
you are just having CSR because you want to enhance image.
yes,
So you are not genuine. That's one side. And then,
yes,
of course, the other side saying, no, not necessarily, we are really, truly, doing good. So you'll be surprised, a large number of people out there, even you ask students these days, they always, argue that companies are always doing things at the surface level, which is true,
yes,
actually, which is true. Because, you ask public listed company, you see, a public listed company is obligated to its shareholders, right? You see, if you start a company, and let's say you start the company and you share it with 3 of your friends, how are you going to convince your friends that, hey, take some 30% of profits from this company and give it as a donation to, and the best part is, what happens if you're not even making money? Or let's say you're making very little. Okay, if you're not making, you can't give anything, but you're making very little. So if you make very little, how are you going to give donations to, to tackle, environmental issues and social issues? You understand? So it's very difficult to convince your shareholders. You have to remember that. And that's why Milton Friedman said that the most important thing, in a business is to make profits first. Then you talk about social responsibility and economic responsibility. So yes, you are right. Surface level, I totally agree. That I think a lot of companies are doing CSR because sometimes it is required by law. Okay, sometimes they do it because they want to enhance their image. That's why they're doing it. Okay, but genuinely, whether they want to do it, so I'm not saying the companies are not there. I think there are companies that are doing good things, especially social entrepreneurs. There are a lot of social
yes,
entrepreneurs are generally there because again, the definition of social entrepreneurship is different. Because when you define social entrepreneurship means your main goal is whatever profit that you're going to make, you're going to channel the entire profit. After paying all your expenses, you're going to channel it back to do things. You see? So, if you become a social entrepreneur, then it's fine. But if you are a private company and your company is listed, even if it's not listed, you got a few shareholders. It's not easy to convince your shareholders, to part away your funds for this kind of social and environmental. What should be the criteria to assess genuineness of the country? Okay, to me, it's very simple. How do you know whether a company is genuinely doing CSR? I think these days, the answer to this question is very simple, right? In Malaysia, we have got reporting practices. Reporting practices. Okay, this measure is known as ESG. Okay, environmental, social governance. They have got this. And okay, you quantify these targets. You measure, you quantify. There's criteria given. Okay, and I'll give you some examples there. I'll give you an example here. Look at this example. Gatwick Airport. You know Gatwick Airport? Gatwick Airport is a very small airport in London. The main airport is Heathrow, right?
yes,
Gatwick is about 2 hours away. It's a very popular budget. And you can see in their 2019 sustainability report there, they quantify that the report shows that none of their waste was recycled. 62% of flights were by the quietest. They use the quietest aircraft. So all this is quantified. Okay, all this is quantified. Okay, wait, how do I go back? Okay, wait, let me go back again to the question. So the point here is you have CSR initiative and you create measures. Once you create measures, you are able to monitor whether you are achieving your targets or not. Okay, a simple example is your carbon emission. How do you measure how much of carbon emission that your company is producing every month? What is the best way? Anyone?
No idea. I seriously don't know.
It's very easy. It's how much of electricity do you use? The more
How much?
how much of electricity do you use?
Electricity, yes, yes.
Electricity they use carbon. So the more electricity you use, the more carbon you use. So if you
Yes.
know every month that I'm finding ways to reduce the amount of electricity I'm using. One way is, let's say you say, okay, I'm now going to build solar panels on my roof because so that
Right.
I have 20% of my electricity coming from solar panels. That way you can show, okay, month of January, February, you can measure until end of the year, you can show that, okay, my usage of electricity has gone down, meaning my carbon emission has gone down. So that is one of the best ways to quantify how much of carbon emissions you have. But you need to set goals. You set goals,
Right.
you are able to evaluate, whether you are meeting those goals or not. Next question, corporate social innovation. Again, another concept here. What is corporate social innovation? Okay, generally what it means is that whatever products that you are producing, sustainability goals or your social responsibility goals. Okay. Example, you look at this Brazilian company, right? Natura. They are one of the biggest cosmetic companies in the world. Okay, and they focus on preserving biodiversity. They use a lot of their ingredients for their cosmetic. They use sustainable source biodegradable products. So that's innovation. Okay, just like Body Shop. You know Body Shop. Do you all have Body Shop? You know the brand
Yes.
Body Shop.
Yes, of
Okay.
course. Here in Pakistan.
Yeah. So these are all examples of I think in India they have the Himalaya brand. Himalaya. I don't know whether you have seen the Himalaya products as well.
Yes, yes, I did. I did. It's from India, yes.
And then you can see Mark and Spencer there. Another example how Mark and
Yes.
Spencer, they into their CSR practices, right? Their social innovation. They find ways to reduce waste. They
Right.
find ways to reduce energy and all that. Okay, so there are so many examples here. You can see Procter and Gamble.
Yes.
They produce shampoos and all that. They've got to actually innovate and create this kind of products. You actually spend a lot of money initially. There's a lot of R&D that goes in, but
True.
of course, in the long run, that will benefit you in the long run.
Right. So does
Okay,
it
so
mean it is
that's
difficult?
where the social innovation work. Yes. Hello, I didn't get that.
Yes, sorry. So I was saying, so Dr. Manjit, does it mean it is difficult for small and medium enterprises to go for innovation, corporate social innovation, because it requires a lot of R&D investment and they
So
have less resources?
yeah, so you see, that is why when we talk about CSR, to ask small companies to go into CSR, it's very challenging. Many of these small companies can impossible, they are struggling to survive, and you want to ask them to save the world. So I think it's a very big task to get smaller companies, right, to unless small companies that are making money, then of course it's their obligation to do good as well. Okay, and then the concept of corporate ethics, how paramount corporate ethics are potential. You see, ethics and CSR are closely related because generally companies will only do good if they think that it is the right thing, right? You need to be ethical. You think that it's the right thing to do, right? So I would say, having CSR practices, it's generally, it's always the right thing to do because that's how you become, an ethical firm. You see, so you cannot run away from that. And of course, there are potential and current employees. Obviously, every company need to have some kind of ethical policy. You need to have, as you know, ethical policy or some ethical framework. Because if you don't have, then there is high chance that your existing employees, your current employees, may ultimately engage in unethical behavior. You need to have very clear-cut agenda for ethics in your company. I give you an example, right? Gift giving. Gift giving. In Asia, giving gifts, if you go to China, you go to Japan, you go to South Korea, even in Malaysia, it's very common to give gifts during the festive periods, especially during Chinese New Year in Malaysia, because we have got about almost 28% of our population are Chinese, right? And I would say the business sector in Malaysia is controlled by the Chinese. So during Chinese New Year, you get a lot of the corporates, companies like banks, they give a lot of hampers to their clients.
Nice.
Because and why do they do that? Because that's a culture. It's a culture.
Right.
So it's a culture, So, but in the West, giving gifts is not allowed in the West.
Yes.
Because you give, it's not an ethical practice.
Right.
So, so that is why companies need to be very clear with all these. You need to have a policy. Okay, if you think that giving gifts should not be there, then you have a clear-cut policy. If someone gives you a gift, what do you do about it? There must be, a policy on that. And then, purchasing. Normally, the purchasing department is always facing a lot of problem, with ethical issues, because if you become a purchasing manager, you deal with all the suppliers and they want to take care of you. It's very common, right? So you need to make sure that you have a decision-making process. Make sure that you don't allow one purchasing manager to make decisions in the company. So if you want to buy computers, you want to buy cars, you want to buy raw material, you create a committee. A committee decide on what to buy and how much we're going to buy. Not one person is deciding on what to buy and how much to buy. So that way you solve the entire problem, of all these, So you need to have, all these ethical practices, and of even new employees as well. If you want to, a lot of young employees these days will want to work in companies which are ethical as well. So for you to create an ethical culture is not easy. You need to create an ethical culture. It will take time, but you need to create an ethical culture. You need to have a corporate culture where there are ethical, credos built into the system. You need to do that. Okay, and then of course the next generation of workers, millennials, these young workers today are very different. They tend to, many are not serious. They tend to job hop a lot, but I'm not sure about the students in Pakistan, but I know quite a number of students from Monash University have become social entrepreneurs. They become social entrepreneurs.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
quite a
We
number
have students in our university as well. Even from students in third semester, fourth semester, they are working, to help the society at their
yeah.
own.
So it's good. It's good. So you can see that the current generation, I would say a lot of them are very social. Their consciousness towards the environment and towards social issue is much bigger. Although I think it will still take a long time for us to reach the Western standards. If you go to the West, right? People do not even, they see, oh, this product, whatever product that is produced, you need to have a label from where it is manufactured. Labeling is a must. So a lot of countries, right, they're forcing manufacturers to put the label so that consumers can decide if they don't want to buy products coming from certain countries and all that.
True.
They have a choice.
Yes.
Okay. Of course, in Asia, it's still a long way to go. I don't think so. You can change orientation of the millennials, right, to become completely conscious about all these social issues, because many of these millennials also come from families which are not well-to-do. So it's very challenging as well. Okay, and then so what should the digestible plan be or policy? As I say, everybody, CSR is something that is good, right? And but we have to be very practical. Okay, we cannot force organizations to, have CSR practices. I think, there must be a limit to, to regulations as well. Maybe the government can come up with, a very clear policy on how they go about creating CSR agenda, covering small firms, large firms. If you're a public listed company, obviously if you make more money, so obviously you need to do more. But if you're a small firm, it's quite challenging for firms to, to go into CSR as well. Plus, even knowledge about CSR, quite a number of companies don't even know what CSR is all about. You'll be surprised. I've seen large corporations, right? They have a one-man show, a one person in charge of their entire CSR. And this is a multi-million dollar company. You only have one person in charge of CSR. Because again, I would say there's a lot of opportunities here, right? But I think government must come up with certain initiatives. To start with, in Malaysia, we have CSR Malaysia. I'm not sure whether you have something like that in Pakistan. Here we have CSR Malaysia.
Right.
Generally, it's actually an agency that is, they give generally, they assist companies that want to go into CSR with training programs, and then they have got CSR awards. So they work together with NGOs, they work together with the government and all that.
That is really nice initiative. Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Manjeet, for discussing such an important topic. And really, that was too detailed. I mean, you give examples, you supported it with the updated data regarding each thing, and you gave very, the examples of those companies who are very popular, the Procter & Gamble, Unilever.
It's good. I'm happy that, I really hope that the students enjoyed the session. And I'm happy that you invited me. And I mean, it was very unfortunate that we couldn't have the session together with the other presenter from the UK, but do invite me even in the coming semester, if you have got, I teach international business, just to let you know. You can pass this message to your other colleagues as well. If you have got any research sessions, if you want a seminar on research areas, I do research in the in a few areas in international business as well. So that I can always, so do keep in touch.
Yes, of course, why not? I would be, telling them that you are available, and if there would be any seminar, so definitely we would have you on board for sure. Thank you very much for your precious time. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye.